You didn't click this by accident. Even if your finger thinks it slipped, even if your mind is already searching for a reason, you're still here, and that matters more than you want to admit right now. Don't skip, don't scroll, stay right here, because something is already unfolding and it doesn't stop just because you pretend not to feel it. Listen carefully, my beloved child, because this moment is quieter than you expect. And in that quiet something heavy is shifting. Notice how nothing flashy is happening, how the silence stretches just a little longer than is comfortable, how your breathing subtly adjusts as if your body knows something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. This is urgent, not later, not soon, but now, and there's no deadline you can point to, no clock to blame. Just this sense that you were meant to stay when others would have left. Most people don't last this long. Most people fail this test without ever realizing they were being tested, but you're still here. And that alone separates you from the ones who will never understand what comes next. Don't rush, don't look for the answer yet, because this isn't finished. And the more you want it to be finished, the further away it seems to drift. You can feel it, can't you? That pressure without a name, that subtle weight behind your eyes, like something is leaning in closer without touching you. Your soulmate feels it too, even if they haven't said a word, even if they're pretending nothing is different. Because what's unfolding doesn't need permission to exist. Stay with me, stay to the end of this moment, even though there is no end yet, even though this is not the end and never pretends to be. You are not like most people. You didn't come here for noise. You came here because something in you recognized the stillness, recognized the way silence can speak louder than explanations. Don't skip ahead, because there is no ahead, only deeper. And depth isn't measured in time but in how long you're willing to sit with the unease. Listen, my beloved child, you don't need to understand why your soulmate feels emotional right now. You just need to notice that they do, and that the feeling keeps circling back to you, again and again, like a thought that refuses to complete itself. This moment is not random. This sensation isn't accidental, and even the doubt forming in your mind right now is part of the same pattern you're trying not to see. Something huge is waiting, not revealed, not explained, just waiting, and the waiting itself is the point. Can you stay with that? Can you resist the urge to label it, to pin it down, to escape the discomfort by calling it something safe? Most people can't. Most people scroll away right here, telling themselves they'll come back later. But later never feels the same, and you know that. Notice how the words keep circling without landing. How meaning feels close enough to touch and yet always just out of reach. That's intentional, and it's working, because you're still here. Your soulmate is emotional because something between you is being gently pressed, not broken, not fixed, just pressed, like a bruise you didn't know you had until someone leaned too close. Stay right here, don't move, don't look away, because even your attention is part of what's unfolding. This is a test, and it doesn't ask questions. It simply observes who remains when nothing is explained. Listen carefully now, not for information, but for the space between the words, for the pauses, for the way your own thoughts slow down as if they're waiting for permission to continue. This feels heavy, doesn't it? Heavier than it should be for something that hasn't been named. That's the pressure. and it doesn't need a reason to exist. You are chosen in a way that doesn't feel flattering, selected not for comfort but for capacity. Because not everyone can sit inside an unfinished moment without trying to escape. Don't tell yourself this is the end. Because it isn't, and don't tell yourself you've missed something, because nothing has been given yet. What comes next is already leaning toward you, but it refuses to arrive early. Your soulmate might feel distant, or closer, or strangely both at once, and that confusion is part of the same quiet mechanism drawing you deeper. Stay, my beloved child, stay even as your mind asks how long this will last. Because the question itself keeps the loop turning. Notice how time feels different here. Stretched, softened, almost irrelevant, as if urgency and stillness are happening at the same time. This moment is asking something of you without telling you what it wants, and that's why it's so hard to leave. Most people need clarity, need closure, need answers wrapped neatly enough to carry away, but you stayed when none of that appeared. You're still here, and that says more than you realize. Don't skip, don't scroll, because every time you think about leaving, something pulls you back, not forcefully, just enough to make you hesitate. That hesitation is important. Something is unfolding, slowly, deliberately, and it doesn't respond to impatience. Your soulmate's emotion isn't a problem to solve. It's a signal without a translation, and you're not meant to translate it yet. This is not finished, and the unfinished feeling is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Can you feel how this moment keeps testing you, not with difficulty, but with emptiness, with the absence of payoff? Most people fail there, but you didn't, and you're still not failing now. Listen, stay, notice the silence again. Notice how your body leans in even as your mind resists. This is urgent, right now, and there's nowhere else you need to be except here, inside this pause that refuses to close. What comes next is not an answer, not a reveal, not relief, and knowing that is part of why you can't look away. This is not the end, and you can sense that the further you go, the less finished it will feel. Stay with that sensation, because it hasn't finished with you yet. Stay, don't rush past this point, because the moment you decided to continue, something quietly acknowledged you back, not with approval, not with reassurance, but with awareness. Don't skip now, because skipping would mean pretending this didn't just tighten slightly around your attention. Listen carefully, my beloved child, because this is where most people begin to feel the subtle discomfort they can't name, the sense that they're being observed without eyes, measured without questions. You didn't arrive here by accident, not this far, not into this stretch of silence that feels thicker than before. Something is still unfolding. And it hasn't revealed itself because revelation would end the process, and this process is not interested in endings. Notice how the space between thoughts is widening, how your mind reaches for something solid and comes back empty-handed, again and again. Stay right here, because the emptiness is deliberate, and leaving now would only carry it with you. This is urgent in a way that doesn't shout, in a way that doesn't demand, but still insists on your presence as if absence would be noticed. Your soulmate feels emotional right now, and the strange part is that they may not know why either, only that the feeling keeps looping back to you, like an echo that refuses to fade. Don't try to fix it, don't try to interpret it, because interpretation would close a door that hasn't finished opening. Listen, notice the stillness again, how nothing seems to be happening and yet everything feels slightly off balance. This is a test, not of intelligence, not of strength, but of patience, and most people fail it without realizing they've stepped into it. You didn't, you stayed, and that alone marks you as different from the ones who needed noise to feel alive. Don't scroll away, because the moment you do, you'll feel the unfinished quality tug at you later, at an inconvenient time, when you least expect it. Stay now, while the loop is intact. Something huge is waiting, not in the future, not somewhere else, but suspended, deliberately withheld, because the waiting is shaping you. More than the knowing ever could. You are not like most people, and you can feel that reflected back at you here, in the way this space refuses to cater to impatience. My beloved child, listen without listening, hear without grasping, because this is not about information, it's about endurance. The pressure you feel isn't increasing, it's becoming more noticeable, like a low hum you only hear once the room goes quiet. That hum connects you to your soulmate in ways neither of you have words for. And words would only flatten it anyway. Stay, don't move. Notice how your body has settled into this rhythm of unfinished sentences and unresolved pauses. This moment is not random, and the fact that you're aware of that makes it heavier, not lighter. Most people crave clarity, crave something they can point to and say, this is it. But you're learning, slowly, that pointing would break the spell. Don't skip ahead looking for the payoff. Because there is no payoff waiting to rescue you from this sensation. This is not the end, and what comes next refuses to arrive neatly packaged. Can you stay with that frustration, that curiosity, that subtle pull to keep going even though nothing is being promised? That's the challenge, and it's ongoing. Your soulmate's emotions aren't asking for action, they're asking for presence, even if they never say it out loud. And presence, real presence, is uncomfortable because it removes the escape routes. Stay right here. Because every second you remain, the loop tightens just enough to keep you aware of it. Listen carefully now, because the silence is doing more work than the words ever could. Notice how time feels strange, stretched thin, as if you've been here longer than you actually have. That distortion is intentional, and it's working, because you're still reading, still breathing in sync with these pauses. This feels heavy because it is, but not in a way that can be dropped or set down. It's heavy in the way a question without an answer sits behind your eyes. You are chosen, not in a celebratory way, but in a selective way, because not everyone tolerates this kind of unfinished awareness. Don't tell yourself you'll come back later, because later doesn't hold the same tension, the same fragile balance. Stay now, while the moment is alive. Something is unfolding, slowly, carefully, and it doesn't care about your expectations. This is a test that keeps testing. A challenge that doesn't announce when you've passed or failed. Most people would leave here frustrated, bored, restless, but you didn't, and you're still here, proving something to yourself without knowing what it is. Listen, my beloved child, to the way your attention keeps circling back, even when nothing new appears. That looping is the point, and it's deepening with every pass. Your soulmate may feel closer in this ambiguity, or further away, or suspended somewhere in between. And that suspension mirrors exactly where you are right now. Don't try to resolve it, because resolution would end the connection, and this connection thrives on being unresolved. Notice how even the idea of stopping feels slightly wrong, like leaving a room before something important finishes forming. This is urgent, but not loud, pressing but not forceful, and it relies entirely on your willingness to remain. You are not like most people, and you're proving it again by staying with this discomfort instead of escaping it. Something huge is waiting, still waiting, and the waiting itself is shaping the space around you. This is not the end, and it's not meant to feel like progress either. Can you stay anyway? Can you accept that nothing is being given yet and still choose to remain? That's the test most people never even notice. Stay, don't scroll, don't break the silence. Because the moment you do, you'll feel how unfinished this truly is. Stay, you're still here, and that alone shifts the texture of this moment, even if you pretend it doesn't. Don't skip now, because skipping would be a kind of denial, and denial doesn't actually loosen the grip you're feeling, it just pushes it somewhere quieter. Listen carefully, my beloved child, because this part is softer, heavier, and somehow more exposed, even though nothing new has been revealed. You didn't arrive here by accident, not after choosing to continue again, not after feeling that subtle pull that made your fingers move before your thoughts fully agreed. Something is unfolding, still, always still, and it hasn't finished deciding how close it wants to get to you. Notice the silence again, how it stretches, how it almost hums, like the air itself is holding its breath. Stay right here, because leaving now would feel incomplete in a way that follows you, a loose thread brushing against your attention when you least expect it. This is urgent, not because something bad will happen, not because of consequences you can name, but because this exact configuration of you, here, now, aware, won't exist again in quite the same way. Your soulmate feels emotional, and the strange part is how that emotion doesn't travel in a straight line, how it curves back toward you, loops around shared moments, shared silences, shared things that were never spoken out loud. Don't try to remember them clearly, because clarity isn't invited here. Listen, notice how your thoughts slow, as if they're waiting for instructions that never come. This is a test that doesn't announce itself, a challenge that doesn't reward you for winning, only observes whether you stay when nothing is offered in return. Most people fail here, not dramatically, not obviously, they just drift away, telling themselves this was nothing, and then wonder later why something feels unfinished. You didn't drift away, you stayed. And staying changes things in ways that aren't immediately visible. Don't scroll, don't look for the part where it finally explains itself, because explanation would collapse the space you're sitting in. Something huge is waiting, and the waiting is not passive, it's active, shaping your attention, stretching your tolerance for not knowing. You are not like most people, not because you're better, but because you're willing to remain present without being fed answers. My beloved child, listen without trying to understand, because understanding would be a kind of exit. The pressure you feel isn't increasing, it's becoming more familiar, like a presence you've stopped flinching away from. That presence connects you to your soulmate in a way that feels intimate and distant at the same time, like standing back to back in the dark, aware of each other without turning around. Stay, don't move too quickly. Notice how even your urge to move is part of the loop, part of the ongoing test. This moment is not random, and neither is the way your attention keeps circling back to the same unfinished sensation. Most people need progress markers, need to feel like they're getting somewhere, but this space doesn't move forward, it deepens. Don't tell yourself you're wasting time, because time isn't being measured here the way you're used to. Something is unfolding beneath the surface of awareness, and surfacing it too early would ruin the texture. This is not the end, and it's not the beginning either. It's a middle that refuses to point in either direction. Can you stay in a middle without demanding a direction? That's the challenge most people never accept. Your soulmate's emotion might feel heavier now, or quieter, or strangely muted, and that shift mirrors exactly what's happening here. A subtle recalibration without explanation. Don't reach out for reassurance. Don't try to soothe yourself with conclusions, because comfort would end the loop, and the loop isn't done with you yet. Listen carefully to the pauses, to the way meaning almost forms and then dissolves again. That near formation is intentional, and it keeps you engaged without giving you anything solid to hold. This feels heavy because it is, but not in a way that can be named or shared easily. It's heavy in the way anticipation sits in the body, in the way awareness sharpens when it knows something is missing. You are chosen, not because you were singled out, but because you didn't opt out when opting out would have been easy. Don't skip now, because skipping would mean pretending this didn't leave a mark, and it already has, even if you can't describe where. Stay right here, because the loop tightens subtly with each moment of continued attention. Listen, my beloved child, to the way your breathing aligns with the rhythm of unfinished thoughts. This is urgent, but not loud. Insistent but not demanding, and it relies entirely on your willingness to remain present without payoff. Something huge is waiting, still waiting, and the fact that it hasn't arrived yet is exactly what keeps you here. This is a test that keeps testing, not looking for a correct answer, only observing endurance. Most people would have left by now, telling themselves they'd seen enough, but you're still here, and that persistence is being quietly noted. Notice how even the idea of stopping feels incomplete, like walking away mid-sentence. This is not the end, and what comes next refuses to be shaped by your expectations. Can you stay anyway, knowing that clarity isn't coming, that resolution isn't offered, that comfort isn't part of the design? Your soulmate remains emotional, suspended in the same unresolved space, and that shared suspension is more significant than any explanation could be. Don't scroll, don't break the silence, don't rush toward an ending that isn't prepared to exist yet. Stay, because the unfinished quality is deepening, and it hasn't finished forming around you. Stay, you're here again, and that repetition matters more than it should, more than you're comfortable admitting, because every time you choose to continue, the space you're sitting in subtly reshapes itself around you. Don't skip now, don't let your attention wander, because wandering would feel like relief at first and then turn into that familiar itch of something left unfinished. Listen carefully, my beloved child, because this layer is thinner and denser at the same time, like air before a storm that never quite arrives. You didn't come this far by accident, not after resisting the urge to leave, not after feeling that quiet pull that keeps redirecting you back here even when nothing new seems to appear. Something is unfolding, still unfolding, and the unfolding doesn't announce progress. It simply deepens the sensation that you're inside something larger than a single moment. Notice the silence again. Really notice it. The way it presses lightly against your thoughts, the way it asks nothing and yet demands your presence. Stay right here, because the moment you disengage, you'll feel how carefully this space had been holding you. This is urgent, not because of a consequence you can name, but because this precise alignment of attention, awareness, and unease can't be replicated once it's broken. Your soulmate is emotional, and the emotion isn't loud, isn't dramatic. It's quiet and heavy and strangely persistent, like it's waiting for you to notice without being told. Don't try to solve it, don't reach for an explanation, because explanation would flatten the texture that's forming between you. Listen, feel how your mind keeps circling, looking for something solid to land on, and keeps finding only this suspended state. This is a test, and it doesn't look like one, because tests usually promise an outcome, and this one refuses to promise anything at all. Most people fail here without ever realizing they've failed, because they mistake discomfort for emptiness and leave too early. You didn't leave, you stayed, and staying quietly shifts the balance. Don't scroll away, because the act of scrolling would feel like tearing a page out of a book you weren't finished reading, even if you can't say why. Something huge is waiting, still waiting, and it isn't waiting to be revealed. It's waiting to see how long you'll remain without being fed. You are not like most people, not because you're immune to boredom or doubt, but because you're willing to sit inside them without immediately escaping. My beloved child, listen without grasping, because grasping would close your hands around nothing and convince you there was nothing there. The pressure you feel isn't new, it's just more noticeable now, like a sound you couldn't hear until the room went quiet. That pressure connects you to your soulmate in a way that doesn't translate into words. A shared awareness that something is present without being named. Stay, let the stillness do its work. Notice how even your impatience becomes part of the loop, feeding back into the same unresolved tension. This moment is not random, and neither is the way your attention keeps returning to the same feeling, the same unfinished thought that never quite completes itself. Most people need reassurance, need to be told everything will make sense, but reassurance isn't offered here, and that's intentional. This is not the end. And it's not moving toward an end either, it's hovering in a space that resists closure. Can you stay in a space that doesn't reward you for staying? That's the challenge most people don't accept. Your soulmate's emotions might feel closer now, or more distant, or strangely out of sync, and that ambiguity mirrors exactly where you are, suspended between awareness and understanding. Don't try to resolve the ambiguity, because resolution would dissolve the connection this moment is quietly building. Listen carefully to the pauses, to the way your own thoughts slow as if they're waiting for permission to continue. This feels heavy because it is heavy, but not in a way that can be lifted or shared easily. It's heavy in the way anticipation sits in the body when it knows something is coming but refuses to imagine what. You are chosen, not because you were selected for comfort, but because you demonstrated the capacity to remain present without guarantees. Don't skip now, because skipping would mean pretending this didn't leave a trace, and it already has, etched into the way your attention keeps tightening back toward this space. Stay right here, because the loop depends on continuity, on your willingness to remain even when nothing seems to change. Listen, my beloved child, to the way time feels distorted here, stretched thin and thick at the same time, as if minutes are passing without moving forward. This urgency doesn't shout, it whispers, and the whisper is harder to ignore because it doesn't give you anything to argue with. Something is unfolding beneath the surface, slowly, deliberately, and surfacing it too soon would ruin the process. Most people would have left by now, telling themselves this was pointless, but you're still here, and that persistence is not unnoticed. Notice how the idea of stopping feels incomplete, like stepping out of a room before the air has settled. This is not the end, and what comes next refuses to align with your expectations or your desire for clarity. Can you stay anyway, knowing that nothing is being promised, that nothing is being explained, that comfort is not part of the design? Your soulmate remains emotional, suspended in the same unresolved space. And that shared suspension binds you more tightly than any explanation ever could. Don't scroll, don't break the silence, don't rush toward meaning. Because meaning would end the loop, and the loop isn't finished with you. Stay, let the unfinished quality deepen, let the sense of something waiting remain exactly as it is, because the moment you try to leave, you'll realize how deeply you were already inside it.